The Galactic Alliance had been fighting the Vex Empire for so long that most species had forgotten what peace felt like. 3 centuries of interstellar warfare had drained resources, decimated populations, and turned once thriving planets into tactical staging grounds. The Alliance, a coalition of 17 advanced civilizations, had thrown everything they had at the relentless Vex war machine: antimatter bombs, quantum disruptors, psychic battalions, and even weaponized black holes. Nothing worked, not long-term anyway. Admiral Zorthalek stared at the holographic battle map with 4 of his 6 eyes, while the other 2 scanned the latest casualty reports. His bioluminescent skin had dimmed to a dull blue, a sign of extreme fatigue among the Colorian people. "We've lost the Centauri outpost," his second-in-command, Commander Vexil, reported. "That's the 3rd defensive position this week." "And the Vex advance?" Zorthalek asked, already knowing the answer. "Unchanged. Their primary fleet will reach the Orion Alliance headquarters in approximately 27 standard cycles." Zorthalek's gill slits flared, the Colorian equivalent of a resigned sigh. "So we have less than a month before total collapse." The command center fell silent. The various species of the Alliance, from the crystalline Phosphorians to the gaseous Nimbari, all had different ways of expressing despair, but the emotion translated universally. "There is one option we haven't tried," Commander Vexil said hesitantly, her exoskeleton clicking nervously. Zorthalek turned all 6 eyes toward her. "The humans." The word hung in the air like a controversial proposition. Technically, humans were part of the galactic community. They'd achieved faster-than-light travel 70 years ago, and had established colonies on a handful of planets in their sector. But they were widely considered primitive, unpredictable, and frankly a bit weird. The Galactic Alliance had deliberately kept them at arm's length, limiting their participation to observer status and minor trade agreements. "They've been petitioning for full Alliance membership for decades," Vexil continued. "Their ambassadors keep insisting they could help with the war effort." "Help?" scoffed Intelligence Officer Krell, a draconian whose reptilian features were arranged in an expression of contempt. "Their technology is rudimentary at best. They still use chemical propellants in some of their weapons, for void's sake. What could they possibly contribute?" "At this point," Zorthalek replied, "does it matter? The Alliance falls in 27 cycles unless something changes. We might as well try everything." He straightened his uniform, his skin brightening slightly with renewed purpose. "Contact Earth immediately. Request a meeting with their military leadership." Krell's forked tongue flicked out in disapproval. "The Council won't like this. The Council won't like this. The Council," Zorthalek said dryly, "is welcome to come up with a better idea in the next hour. Otherwise, we're talking to the humans." As the communications officer scrambled to establish contact with Earth, Zorthalek couldn't help but wonder if he was making a terrible mistake. Humans had a reputation for being chaotic, emotional, and stubbornly optimistic in the face of overwhelming odds. Their diplomats were known for making grand promises and unorthodox suggestions that baffled the more logical species of the Alliance. But maybe, just maybe, the galaxy needed a little chaos right now. Little did Admiral Zorthalek know that this desperate decision would change the course of the war and galactic history in ways no one could have predicted. The emergency council meeting was going about as well as Admiral Zorthalek had expected, which is to say terribly. "This is outrageous," huffed Councillor Brice Saul, her translucent membranes glowing bright orange with indignation. "Involving humans in our military affairs is like giving a plasma cannon to an infant species." "They've had spaceflight for 70 years, Zorthalek countered. 70 years. Councillor Dream scoffed, his crystalline body chiming with derisive laughter. "My species was designing wormhole generators when we were that young, and yet," Zorthalek said, forcing patience into his voice, "your wormhole generators aren't stopping the Vex advance." That shut Dream up, at least temporarily. The council chamber, a vast amphitheater carved from a single asteroid, buzzed with anxious murmurs as the 17 representatives debated the unthinkable proposition. "I've reviewed the intelligence reports on humans," Krell said, stepping forward with a data tablet. The Draconian's claws tapped across the screen with practiced efficiency. "They are emotional, unpredictable, and their military tactics are baffling at best. They still glorify ancient warriors who rode animals into battle." "That was quite some time ago," Commander Vexil pointed out. 2 of their planetary nations nearly destroyed their entire civilization with nuclear weapons less than 200 years ago, Krell continued. "They've had 42 world wars in their recorded history." 42. Councillor Dream blinked his crystal facets in surprise. "That's actually impressive." "They call their 2 largest conflicts World War I and World War II, Krell said, the scales around his eyes crinkling in what passed for draconian amusement, as if they couldn't be bothered to come up with proper names. Zorthalek's patience was wearing thin. "The point is, they know conflict. Perhaps better than we do. They also have an unusual relationship with something they call coffee, Krell added, squinting at his tablet. Appears to be a stimulant that approximately 80% of their military personnel consume in concerning quantities. Are you suggesting we should be afraid of caffeinated mammals? Zortholic asked. I'm suggesting we should be realistic about what they can offer, Krell replied. Their most advanced ships are barely faster than our civilian transports. Their weapons systems are. The chamber's main communication screen flickered to life, interrupting Krell mid-sentence. A human face appeared, female by their dimorphic standards, with short auburn hair and eyes that reminded Zortholic of the deep oceans of his homeworld. This is Captain Jane Thompson of Earth United Forces, she said, her voice remarkably calm for someone addressing the most powerful interstellar governing body in the known galaxy. I understand you folks finally decided to give us a call. The casual greeting left several council members visibly affronted. Diplomatic protocols typically required at least 6 different formal salutations and recognition of ancestral lineages. Zortholic stepped forward. Captain Thompson, I am Admiral Zortholic of the Galactic Alliance Defense Command. The situation is grave. The Vex Empire has broken through our outer defenses, and yeah, we've been monitoring, Captain Thompson interrupted, taking a sip from a container that Zortholic could only assume contained the mysterious coffee substance. Not to be rude, but we've been offering to help for about 60 years now. The Alliance Council has reconsidered its position, Zortholic said, diplomatically. Captain Thompson raised an eyebrow. You mean you're desperate? Several gasps echoed through the chamber. Krell muttered something under his breath about typical human bluntness. Our strategic position has become challenging, Zortholic admitted. You've got less than a month before the Vex hit your headquarters, Thompson said, matter-of-factly. We've been running simulations. It's not pretty. And you believe you can help? Counselor Bree Sull asked, her membranes now pulsing with skeptical purple. Captain Thompson's face broke into what humans called a smile, though to several council species it looked alarmingly like a threat display. Oh, we can do better than help. We can end this war. The council chamber erupted in a cacophony of sounds, from crystalline chiming to subsonic rumbles, as the representatives expressed their disbelief. The Alliance has been fighting the Vex Empire for 3 centuries, Zortholic reminded her. Yep, and frankly, you've been doing it wrong. Thompson took another sip of her coffee. We've got 5 ships ready to deploy. Give us clearance codes, and we'll be at the front lines in 18 hours. 5 ships? Krell barked out a laugh. The Vex have thousands, Thompson shrugged. Quality over quantity, lizard man. Krell's scales flared in outrage at the informal address. How long would you need to end the war? Zortholic asked, genuinely curious. Captain Thompson glanced off-screen, seemingly consulting someone. She turned back and said, with complete certainty, about 3 hours once we engage. The council chamber went silent, a rarity for a body representing species that communicated through everything from radioactive pulses to pheromone clouds. 3 hours? Zortholic repeated slowly. Give or take, Thompson replied. Depends on traffic. Counselor Dream's crystalline form vibrated with what might have been laughter or alarm. Captain Thompson, with all due respect, the Alliance has deployed quantum weaponry, singularity bombs, and telepathic warfare. What could humans possibly bring to this conflict that we haven't tried in 300 years? Thompson's smile widened. Creativity, Counselor, and a healthy disrespect for the impossible. Zortholic found himself oddly moved by the human's confidence. It was probably misplaced, possibly delusional, but after centuries of calculated retreats and pragmatic losses, there was something refreshing about it. The Council will need to deliberate, he began. With respect, Admiral, Thompson interrupted again. Your intel says 27 cycles before the Vex reach your headquarters. That's about 6 Earth days. We need time to get in position. Zortholic looked around the chamber, at the faces and equivalent sensory organs of the 17 most advanced species in the galaxy, all worn down by centuries of war. What did they have to lose? Permission granted, Captain Thompson, he said, ignoring the squawks of protest from several council members. Transmitting clearance codes now. The Alliance will provide any support you require. Appreciated, Thompson replied. Oh, and one more thing, your people might want to clear out of the Orion sector. Things are gonna get a little weird. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the council in an uproar, and Admiral Zortholic wondering if he'd just made the best or worst decision of his 600-year life. 18 hours later, the promised human fleet arrived at the Alliance's forward command station. Admiral Zortholic, Commander Vexel, and Intelligence Officer Krell watched as 5 modest vessels tumbled into normal space with none of the precision typical of Alliance maneuvers. 5 ships, Krell muttered. They're either suicidal or delusional. The human vessels defied military aesthetics, asymmetrical, with odd protrusions and seemingly random reinforcements. Their names appeared on the sensors: UES reckless optimism, calculated risk, blind luck, questionable decision, and hold my beer, hold my beer, Vexel asked, confused. Another human stimulant, Krell explained. Apparently, it reduces their already questionable capacity for risk assessment. Captain Thompson arrived with her team, Tactical Officer Lieutenant Rodriguez, Navigation Specialist Lieutenant Wu, Chief Engineer Riley, and Science Officer Dr. Fletcher. The engineer immediately began examining alien technology, while the science officer discreetly scanned the aliens. "Is that a tricorder?" Krell asked suspiciously. "Just a standard analyzer," Fletcher replied, "though we nicknamed it after an old sci-fi show." "I've reviewed your files," Krell said. "None of you have more than 20 years of military experience." Riley snorted. "Yeah, well, humans don't live 600 years like you folks. We work with what we've got." In the briefing room, Zortholic activated a holographic map showing the overwhelming Vex forces against sparse Alliance positions. "We've mined the approach vectors, but their minesweepers have proven effective," he explained. "Have you tried not using mines in a predictable pattern?" Thompson asked. The Alliance officers exchanged confused glances. "The mines are deployed according to optimal mathematical distribution," Vexel explained. "Any other pattern would be inefficient." "Exactly," Thompson said. "The Vex expect optimal patterns, because that's how you folks think." Lieutenant Wu manipulated the controls, showing seemingly random mine placements. "This makes no tactical sense," Krell protested. "You've left obvious gaps." "That's the point," Wu replied. "The Vex will assume it's a trap and waste resources solving a puzzle that doesn't exist." Thompson marked 3 exposed positions for their ships that appeared suicidally vulnerable. "Those positions offer no defensive advantage," Zortholic warned. "Yep," Thompson agreed cheerfully. "That's why the Vex won't expect us there." Riley grinned. "We've also rigged our communication systems to broadcast across all Vex frequencies simultaneously." "To transmit what?" Vexel asked. "Human music history, starting with death metal and bagpipes." "You're going to play music at them?" Krell asked incredulously. "Among other things," Thompson said. "But that's just the warm-up. The real show involves what we call Operation Trojan Horse." As Thompson outlined the rest of the plan, Zortholic felt his bioluminescent skin cycling through colors of shock, disbelief, and surprisingly, hope. The plan violated virtually every established principle of galactic warfare. "This is madness," Krell declared. "You're proposing to win a 3-century war with pranks and misdirection." "Not just pranks," Fletcher corrected. "Precisely calibrated psychological warfare. The Vex operate on logic and predictability. We're introducing chaos." "The Vex have encountered chaos before," Vexel pointed out. "They adapted." "Not our kind of chaos," Rodriguez said with a predatory smile. "Humans have elevated chaos to an art form." Zortholic studied them carefully. Their confidence should have seemed delusional, yet there was something compelling about their conviction. "You have my authorization," he said finally. "But I'm assigning liaison teams to each of your vessels." "Fair enough," Thompson agreed. "Just make sure they're not prone to motion sickness. Our flight patterns get a little creative." After the humans departed, Krell approached the Admiral. "These humans will get themselves killed, and possibly take Alliance personnel with them." "Your objection is noted," Zortholic replied. "But I'm willing to try anything, even human insanity." As Thompson left, she turned back with a knowing smile. 3 hours, Admiral. Set your watch, or whatever you use to tell time with those 6 eyes of yours." Watching them leave, Zortholic couldn't decide whether the humans were brilliant strategists or simply too primitive to understand the impossibility of their task. Either way, the galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented: humans at war. Admiral Zortholic and his senior staff watched the main view screen with expressions ranging from horrified fascination to reluctant admiration. The human ships had taken their positions exposed, vulnerable, and seemingly oblivious to conventional military tactics. "They're going to die," Krell stated flatly. "And they're going to do it while playing What Is This Noise?" Commander Vexel adjusted the audio feed. "According to the Human Cultural Database, this is something called Bohemian Rhapsody, by a collective known as Queen. It's being broadcast on all Vex communication frequencies. It's oddly mathematical," one of the Phosphorian officers observed, their crystalline face glittering with interest. "The harmonics follow a complex pattern, followed by complete chaos," Krell noted as the music shifted dramatically. "Much like their battle plan." On the tactical display, the 5 human vessels had arranged themselves in a formation that made no strategic sense whatsoever, asymmetrical, with varying distances between ships and no clear defensive positioning. The Vex fleet has altered course, a sensor officer reported. They're hesitating. Of course they are, Zorthalak said. They're trying to understand the human strategy, just as we are. The comm system crackled. Alliance Command, this is Thompson. Phase 1 complete, Vex are taking the bait. Commencing Phase 2. Before Zorthalak could respond, the human vessels suddenly accelerated in 5 different directions at speeds that should have torn them apart. The Vex fleet, programmed to respond to traditional attack patterns, scattered their forces to intercept. What are they doing? Krell demanded. They're splitting the Vex fleet, but they've also separated themselves. UES questionable decision is launching something, the sensor officer reported, confusion evident in their voice. Thousands of small objects, not missiles, not mines. The objects in question spread across space like a glittering cloud. As they made contact with Vex ships, they adhered to the hulls. Magnifying, Commander Vexel ordered. The view screen zoomed in on a Vex cruiser. Attached to its hull was a small device that was blinking. They've stuck lights on the Vex ships, Krell said, his voice flat with disbelief. Blinking lights, not just lights, Zorthalak realized as patterns began to form across the Vex fleet. Messages. They're using the Vex ships as a display board. Indeed, as more of the devices activated, phrases in the Vex language began to appear, spelled out across dozens of ships. Your Emperor wears synthetic garments, and venting atmospheric waste into space is against regulations, and honk, if you hate your command structure. This is childish, Krell hissed. But effective, Zorthalak noted as the Vex fleet began to show signs of disarray. The Vex command structure relies on perfect coordination. They're disrupting it with humor. Meanwhile, the UES reckless optimism had maneuvered directly into the path of the Vex flagship. Captain Thompson's face appeared on the comm screen, looking unnervingly calm. All right, folks, time for the main event, she announced. Prepare for Operation Trojan Horse. Captain, Zorthalak warned. The Vex flagship outguns you 1,000 to 1. That's why we're not going to fight it, Thompson replied with a grin. Riley, you're up. The screen split to show the human engineer working frantically in what appeared to be an extraordinarily cluttered engine room. Ready, Captain. Firing the pests now. Pests, Commander Vexel asked. Programmed electronic systems targeting saboteurs, Thompson explained. Riley's been working on them for years. Never had a target big enough to use them on. The reckless optimism fired what appeared to be a conventional missile salvo at the Vex flagship. The massive vessel's defensive systems easily intercepted the projectiles, which exploded harmlessly against its shields. That's it, Krell asked. That's your grand strategy. Wait for it, Thompson replied, checking her watch. For several moments, nothing happened. Then, the Vex flagship's lights flickered. Its weapons systems powered down. Its engines cut out. Across the fleet, other Vex vessels began experiencing similar malfunctions. What did you do? Zorthalak asked, his gill slits flaring in surprise. Riley's face reappeared on the screen, covered in what humans called a grin. Those weren't missiles, he explained. They were delivery systems for about 10 million microscopic robots. Vex defensive systems were designed to stop physical threats, not digital ones. Our little friends just penetrated their network, and are rewriting their command protocols. That's impossible, Krell protested. The Vex use quantum encrypted systems. No computer in the galaxy could crack them. We didn't crack them, Riley said. We went around them. See, Vex systems are designed to repel sophisticated attacks, but they've never encountered a computer virus programmed by a 13-year-old caffeine addict with a grudge. What? Vexel asked, thoroughly confused. Long story, Riley said. Let's just say my kid brother was very motivated after they canceled his favorite VR game. These viruses don't try to break encryption, they exploit the gaps between systems. The Vex never considered that an attack could be simultaneously brilliant and incredibly stupid. On the tactical display, Lieutenant Butdu-Yu's vessel, the UES Blind Luck, had positioned itself near the largest concentration of disabled Vex ships. Beginning Phase 3, Wu reported. Broadcasting the invitation now. Invitation, Zorthalak asked. To surrender, Thompson explained. But with a twist. The twist became apparent as the Alliance officers watched Wu transmit a message to the crippled Vex ships. It wasn't a demand for their capitulation, it was an offer to join the Alliance, complete with an itemized list of benefits including dental plan and casual Fridays. "This is absurd," Krell muttered. "The Vex would never." He was interrupted as a Vex communication came through on all channels. The translation matrix converted the complex algorithmic language. "Request clarification on casual Friday concept." "Is this a joke?" Commander Vexel asked. "Not at all," Dr. Fletcher replied, joining the transmission. "The Vex society is built on rigid hierarchy and predetermined roles. We're offering them something they've never had: choices." As the Alliance command staff watched in stunned silence, Dr. Fletcher began explaining the concept of work-life balance to the Vex commander. Meanwhile, the UES Hold My Beer had positioned itself near the Vex fleet supply vessels, and was somehow impossibly converting them to broadcast what Thompson called a galactic dance party mix. "This shouldn't be working," Zorthalak said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it is," Thompson replied. "The Vex have spent centuries fighting against logical, predictable enemies. They've never had to deal with humans before. We're the galaxy's wild card." The tactical display showed more Vex ships powering down, their command systems thoroughly confused by the combination of technical sabotage and conceptual warfare. The remaining operational vessels had begun to retreat, their perfect formation now a disorganized scramble. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, their voice strained with disbelief, "we're receiving surrender signals from 17% of the Vex fleet. And they're asking about vacation policies." Krell's scales had turned a pale shade of green. 300 years of war, and they're asking about vacation time. "Everyone wants time off," Riley said with a shrug. "Even biomechanical hive-mind warriors apparently." Thompson reappeared on screen, looking satisfied but not surprised. "Admiral, I'd say we're about halfway through our 3-hour window. Ready for the grand finale." Zorthalak, despite his centuries of military experience, found himself at a loss for words. He simply nodded. "Excellent," Thompson replied. "Tell your people to watch the Vex flagship in about 5 minutes. Dr. Fletcher is about to introduce their supreme commander to an ancient human concept called mutiny." "They're doing what?" Admiral Zorthalak asked, certain he had misheard. "Holding elections," Commander Vexel repeated, her exoskeleton clicking in astonishment. On the Vex flagship, the view screen showed chaos unfolding across the Vex fleet. The microscopic robots that Engineer Riley had deployed were doing more than just disrupting systems. They were altering the Vex command protocols to introduce the concept of democratic voting. The viruses included a simple democracy subroutine, Thompson explained casually over the comm. "Turns out the lower ranks aren't big fans of their leadership's fight until extinction policy." "Impossible," Krell insisted. "The Vex operate on a hive mind with absolute loyalty programming." "About that," Riley chimed in, his face appearing on a split screen. "We found the loyalty algorithm, and replaced it with a cat video." "What?" Zorthalak's 6 eyes blinked in sequence. "Don't worry about it," Riley grinned. "Point is, we introduced the concept of individual choice. For a species that's never had it before, it's pretty intoxicating." On the tactical display, the UES calculated risk had positioned itself alongside several Vex cruisers. Lieutenant Rodriguez was transmitting what he called a beginner's guide to workplace revolution. "This violates every principle of warfare," Krell muttered. "You don't win battles by changing the enemy's mind." "Why not?" Thompson asked. "Seems more efficient than blowing them up." The communications officer's console suddenly lit up with incoming transmissions. "Admiral, the Vex Supreme Commander is requesting direct communication." The view screen shifted to display the Vex leader, a towering biomechanical entity with multiple sensory appendages and a central processing core that pulsed with eerie light. "Alliance forces," it intoned, its mechanized voice echoing with artificial harmonics. "This unit acknowledges tactical defeat." A stunned silence fell over the command center. "Well," Thompson prompted, "aren't you going to accept their surrender?" Zorthalak cleared his throat. "Vex Supreme Commander, as representative of the Galactic Alliance." "I." "Correction," the Vex interrupted. "This unit is former Supreme Commander. New designation, interim president pending general election." Krell's jaw literally dropped, his reptilian features frozen in shock. "Terms of surrender as follows," the Vex continued. "Immediate cessation of hostilities, withdrawal of Vex forces from contested space, establishment of demilitarized zones." It paused, its lights flickering in what might have been uncertainty, "and request for cultural exchange program, specifically regarding concept of weekends." Dr. Fletcher appeared on a secondary screen. I may have introduced them to the idea of work-life balance. They're very interested. 300 years of war, Zorthalak said slowly, ended by the concept of taking days off. And cat videos, Riley added helpfully. The Vex leader's sensory appendages twitched. Additional inquiry, significance of phrase hold my beer. Preliminary analysis suggests important cultural ritual. Thompson suppressed a smile, something like that. As the formal surrender proceedings began, Commander Vexel checked the mission clock. 2 hours and 47 minutes since engagement, she noted with disbelief. They actually did it. Across the Vex fleet, ships were powering down weapons systems. Some had begun transmitting curious messages requesting information about retirement packages and healthcare options. I don't understand, Krell said, his usual confidence shattered. How did you know this would work? We didn't, Thompson admitted. But humans have a saying, crazy enough to work. Sometimes the most irrational approach is the one your enemy can't predict. The Alliance officers watched as UES Hold My Beer moved alongside the Vex flagship, establishing what Thompson called a diplomatic channel that seemed to involve transmitting something called the office to the Vex leadership. You won a 3-century war, Zorthalak said, by introducing the enemy to comedy and time off. Thompson shrugged. Everyone wants to laugh. Everyone wants freedom. The Vex just didn't know it until today. As the final Vex vessels signaled their surrender, Rodriguez contacted the command center. Should we tell the council the good news? Zorthalak's bioluminescent skin brightened, with what might have been the Quilorian equivalent of amusement. I believe I'll let Captain Thompson explain her methods personally. The council's reaction should be memorable. Mission accomplished, Thompson said, checking her watch. With 13 minutes to spare. 1 week later, the Galactic Alliance Council chamber was uncharacteristically silent. 17 representatives of the most advanced civilizations in known space sat in stunned disbelief as they watched the holographic replay of the final moments of a war that had defined their existence for 3 centuries. When the recording ended, showing the Vex interim president ceremonially deactivating the fleet's primary weapons array while wearing what humans called a Hawaiian shirt, Counselor Drim finally broke the silence. This is unprecedented, the crystalline being chimed. That's an understatement, Counselor Brisal replied, her membranes cycling through colors of confusion and amazement. They defeated the greatest military force in galactic history by introducing them to relaxation. Captain Thompson stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by her crew. Unlike the Alliance officials in their formal regalia, the humans looked almost casual, their uniforms neat but simple, their posture relaxed yet attentive. I wouldn't say we defeated them, Thompson corrected. We just gave them options they never knew existed. But how did you know it would work? Counselor Drim asked, crystal facets glittering with curiosity. Thompson glanced at Dr. Fletcher, who stepped forward. The Vex Empire was built on absolute control and singular purpose, Fletcher explained. Their entire society functioned on the principle that efficiency was the highest value. But efficiency without purpose is meaningless. When we introduced concepts like leisure, personal choice, and humor, they malfunctioned. Counselor Brisal suggested. No, Fletcher said. They evolved. Every sentient species has an innate desire for self-determination. The Vex had simply engineered it out of themselves generations ago. We just reminded them. Admiral Zorthalak, standing off to the side with Commander Vexel and a still disgruntled Krell, couldn't help but notice how the council members leaned forward when the humans spoke, not with the typical deference shown to logical arguments, but with genuine fascination. What I don't understand, Krell interjected, is how you developed this strategy. You claim to have been monitoring our war for decades, yet you never shared these insights. You never asked, Engineer Riley said with a shrug. Besides, would you have believed us? A species barely a century into space travel telling the mighty Galactic Alliance how to fight their war. The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Captain Thompson, Counselor Drim asked, what happens now with the Vex? They're holding their first general election next month, Thompson replied. They've requested human observers to ensure it's fair. Apparently they're forming political parties. The 2 front-runners are the Progressive Efficiency Party and the Work-Life Balance Coalition, and they're no longer hostile. Counselor Brisal asked skeptically. Oh, they're still plenty hostile, Lieutenant Rodriguez said with a grin, but now they're channeling it into strongly worded diplomatic messages and competitive sports leagues. They've particularly taken to something called hockey, Lieutenant Wu added. We may have created a monster there. The council chamber filled with a variety of sounds, from crystalline chiming to subsonic rumbles, as the representatives processed this information. Admiral Zorthalak moved to stand beside Captain Thompson. The Alliance owes you a debt that can never be repaid, he said formally, his bioluminescent skin glowing bright blue with sincerity. 300 years of war, ended in 3 hours. How can we possibly thank you? Thompson smiled. Well, for starters, you could finally approve our membership application to the Galactic Alliance. We've been waiting 60 years. Counselor Drim's crystalline form vibrated with what might have been laughter. I believe that can be arranged. Any species that can turn the Vex Empire into democracy enthusiasts deserves a seat at the table. There is one question that remains, Commander Vexel said. If humans possess such unique problem-solving abilities, why did you wait so long to intervene? You've been aware of the conflict for decades. Thompson exchanged glances with her crew before answering. Honestly, we weren't ready before. We needed to overcome some of our own issues first. Such as? Krell asked. Let's just say humans had to learn that the same creativity that makes us good at warfare makes us even better at peace. Thompson replied. A century ago we might have just tried to blow the Vex up. It took us time to realize that understanding your enemy is more powerful than destroying them. A lesson the Alliance could have benefited from centuries ago, Zorthalak admitted quietly. As the formal proceedings concluded, and the Council prepared to vote on Earth's membership, Krell approached Riley with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. There's something I still don't understand, the Draconian said. Your virus that replaced the Vex loyalty programming with cat videos. What exactly is a cat? Riley's face lit up with mischievous delight. Oh man, you're in for a treat. Imagine a small predator that humans keep in their homes, that both loves and despises them, and has mastered the art of looking supremely unimpressed by everything. And this is entertaining? Krell asked, confused. Cats are possibly humanity's greatest creation, Riley declared. Well, cats and pizza. Speaking of which, is there anywhere to get food around here? Saving galactic civilization works up an appetite. As the humans mingled with the council members, introducing concepts like happy hour and casual Friday to the bewildered but increasingly interested representatives, Admiral Zorthalak found himself standing next to Captain Thompson once more. I've been in military service for 600 years, he told her quietly. I've seen technologies rise and fall, strategies evolve and become obsolete, but I've never seen anything like what you accomplished. Thompson nodded thoughtfully. You know, there's an old human saying, the pen is mightier than the sword. We just updated it a bit. To what? Zorthalak asked. The meme is mightier than the missile, Thompson replied with a grin, and never underestimate the power of a good vacation policy. As the Alliance prepared to enter a new era of peace, with humans taking their long overdue place in galactic politics, Admiral Zorthalak couldn't help but wonder what other impossible problems these strange contradictory beings might solve with their peculiar blend of creativity, chaos, and cat videos. The galaxy would never be the same, and that Zorthalak decided as he watched the humans teaching a group of fascinated council members, something called the electric slide, was probably for the best.